Hey, Video Game Guru here. Since recording this video, the Pokemon Nintendo Direct has come out, and it has sparked, once again, controversy. Joy? Frustration? Happiness? It's done all of it, because you can't please everybody. But I'm not here to talk about controversy, I'm here to talk about why what they came out with and what they're announcing is probably one of the best things that I've seen in a long time in the Pokemon main game industry. A lot of people nowadays seem to think that every single game has to have the biggest, the bestest, the mostest every single time. And whereas that can be impressive sometimes and necessary depending on where you're taking the game in terms of evolution and progression from the previous iteration, not every game needs it. With that being said, Pokemon, aside from also re-releasing Mystery Dungeon Remastered, which is fantastic, and what you are currently seeing on screen and what I had a blast playing, can't wait for it to release, they mentioned the fact that they're going to be doing an expansion pass as opposed to a full-on new game release. Shocker, right? I know. A lot of people are thinking that this is far too soon of a time frame for the DLC to come out, or that we got an unfinished product considering the dex count wasn't there, considering that we had reused trees again and again in the wild area. Yeah. So a lot of people seem to have come to the conclusion that Nintendo is being a bunch of money-grubbing, tiny corporate, gigantic corporate, Gigantamaxed corporate monsters that are trying to gouge our pockets. I don't really think that's the case, and if you want to say that, they've been coming out with third iterations of games that they charge you at the very full price like a year later. That was their MO for the longest time, and it came out full priced with no more than plot expansions, the maybe 12 to 15 Pokemon difference between two games, and a couple of special events that can only be tied to that one, meaning if you want those special events, you have to get the newest version. I don't really see what there is to be mad about. Either way, let's actually get into some facts about this. The dex count is going to be roughly 60 to 70% of the total dex, including the national. There's a great video by Sylph Spectre, you should check him out, where he talks about all the releases that's coming out and everything that came along with it. He goes into the specifics and crunches the numbers a little bit better than I have right now, but as a frame of reference, you're going to be getting almost exactly what you wanted. You don't need every single Pokemon. It seems to be that they're doing a release by terrain and region, making it more geographically sensible. To me, that's dope. I'm not mad at it. That sounds like a great time. Another point that I just want to touch on from that is what I said earlier, expansions. We've had red, blue, and then yellow. We had gold, silver, and then crystal. We had a ruby, sapphire, and then emerald. I would much rather pay $30 to get two expansions. That's $15 a pop, with 100 Pokemon each, a legendary for each one, a story tied to each one. You can't forget the customization and clothing for each one, akin to the region that you're in, that you can take with you. This is the first time that we've had Pokemon not make you have to start your journey over fresh, or just trade everything over and have to go through the tedium. They're making it convenient. They're making it sensible. They're not selling you a partially done product. What they're selling you is a evolution in their business structure. Honestly, if they keep on doing this from now on, I can see myself being pleased with each Pokemon game that comes out, including re-releases and remasters. Give me the whole package, and then go ahead and slap the rest of that stuff on there that you've been doing since the inception of your virtual games, and I'll be happy. Then we have some of the things that are like for quality of life, the co-op legendary hunt, which was a great little mention in there. The fact that you get to go into the Gigantamax dens and you can do a co-op, like actual dungeon crawl with your fellow trainers. It's probably one of the highlights of that. I mean, that's one of the things that they highlighted, but to me personally, to know that I can now, as I was mentioning in the review, for those of you that watched it, if not, there'll be a link below in the description. It's almost like you get to have your own Pokemon manga. You get to have your own specified adventure with your friends and their Pokemon. You get to go camping, you get to go inside of caves and dungeons and catch legendaries and Pokemon that are beyond the scope of what you once thought was even possible to catch or encounter. Also, real quick, as a sidebar, I just want to say, I don't get why people thought that the Gigantamax and Dynamaxing was a gimmick. Do none of you remember the intro to Pokemon? How there were giant Dragonite, and giant Nidokings, and giant Gyarados? Everyone thought that that was so dope, and when you played the game and that didn't exist, everyone was a little bit disappointed. I remember hearing at least one kid from each generation complain about that, when you'd see it in the show, but it never happened. Now we got it, and now it's not good enough. The roundabout point I'm making in this small rant/appreciation video is the fact that you can't please everyone, and it's an impossible task. But what the overall takeaway is that we should be glad that Pokemon is moving forward with trying to make the journey more expansive and keep us invested longer. Some people complaining about the time frame in which the game came out being too short. I don't really see what that is. I'd rather have the journey be stretched out a little bit. The main game was a little short, and the post game actually has kept me invested with finding new Pokemon to IV train, new Pokemon to breed, new Pokemon to capture as the world opens up with the different terrains and landscapes that you get. Post game, after defeating the championship, the ability to defend your title, and now I find out in a couple of months there's a whole new story, a new legendary, and 100 new Pokemon to catch. That's not a negative for me. And considering that that's going to be a few months after the post game has come out, about 6-7 months by the time it actually drops, another few months, and then we get the other expansion that's all encapsulated for that low price of $30 instead of 50 or 60 like normal. I'm just seeing glowing signs of positivity everywhere. Another thing that I wanted to touch on, to me, that stood out personally, was the new wild areas. Each expansion is going to have a new wild area that we'll get to explore. I'm not sure how expansive it's going to be, but one of the complaints about that from this last game was that there's not enough of it. It's only those 2 sections. It doesn't have enough weather states. That seems lame. That's all they're going to give us, and now you're getting 2 more entirely new unique sections that's going to host those new Pokemon that you were not able to get and were complaining about prior. Also, that means that we're going to be getting, since a lot of people didn't seem to interpret it as new animations being new animations in battle exclusively, it meant new animations in the wild area, in the overworld, in the camp. So we'll once again get to see 200 more Pokemon be brought to life in a realistic fashion of them interacting with one another, becoming friends with one another, having rivalries with one another, finding them in their unique locations, seeing legendaries do things that we normally wouldn't have been able to do, from the Heart Gold and Soul Silver days of them just bouncing up and down behind you, to actually seeing your Pokemon float, glide, run, hop, or do whatever it is that they do. It's all coming together, and it's all going to be, from the looks of things, laid out in a pretty nice roadmap. Long story short, to kind of wrap this up into a succinct point of view, I just wanted to touch on a couple of things that stood out to me, while also showing you the new re-release that they have coming out of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, and show you why I think Pokemon is in a good spot. Regardless the controversy, regardless the complaints, regardless what people would see as them becoming like EA or Ubisoft or whatever, and all of their negative aspects, or Bethesda even. That's not what it is. That's just people unable to be pleased and see the good within not so much bad. It's just nice that there is still some companies out there, the Pokemon company and Nintendo, working to make gaming a overall and a wholly enjoyable experience, while still finding a way to make their business the bottom line, but not hurt us while doing so. It's something that I appreciate, and something that I think should be brought to light in a more positive manner, as opposed to a negative and bashing one. But with all that being said, feel free to check out some of my other videos. I'll leave a link in the description to that Sylph Spectre one, so that way those of you who are interested can go check that out. I'll leave a link to that Pokemon review of mine, so you can check that out if you'd like as well. And don't forget to subscribe, because the moment that these expansions come out, I will be talking about them. But with all that being said, this is the Video Game Guru, signing off.